Hi, Professor Rodriguez. My name is Michelle Braun Osborne, and today is Sunday, February 11th, and this is week 5's lab video for the axial and appendicular skeleton. So today I will show you on myself and also on images just because it's a little bit easier. And we'll start off with the axial skeleton. So the first of the many to record is the anterior view of the skull. So we have this image right here. We have the frontal bone right here on top of the forehead. We have the mandible bone, which is the lower part of the jaw. We have the maxilla, which is above the mouth. We have the vomer bone, which is behind the cartilage of our nose, and it's in the cavity. So right, if you can see it right here, the vomer. And then we have the nasal bone, which is right above where the cartilage creates our nose. And next off, we have the zygomatic bone right here. And then we have this sphenoid bone. You can see it right here. And then we have, as you go more medial, we have the ethmoid bone. And on this side, we have the lacrimal bone. Did I say them all? I think I said them all. Yep. Okay, moving on. So we have the posterior view, the posterior side of the skull. We have the parietal bones right here, the occipital bone, and then we have the temporal bone on the side here, and then we have the mandible right here. I'm going to try and scooch forward. Now we have the lateral view, which is the side of the skull. So again, we have the frontal bone right up front. We have the parietal on the back side. We have the temporal on the side, the occipital bone on the bottom, the mandible here at the lower jaw, the maxilla again above the mouth, the nasal bone, which projects on the outermost side of the lateral view. Then we have the lacrimal, the ethmoid, and then we have here the zygomatic. Okay, moving on. The next one we have is the inferior view of the skull. So it's showing from the inside of the skull. So we have the frontal, the ethmoid, the sphenoid right here, temporal bone on the side again, the parietal on the lower side here, the occipital bone. Okay. I'm going to move on my notes. The next part we have the vertebral column. So it's broken up into sections. The very topmost of the cervical vertebrae is the atlas, and that's C1. Below we have the axis, which is C2. So we have the cervical, then the thoracic vertebrae. The cervical, by the way, is C1 through 7. And then we lower down to the thoracic and then the lumbar bone. Next, we have the sacrum and the coccyx. It's hard for me to say. Alrighty. That one stays here. Here we have this thoracic cage. So we have the manubrium and the body of the sternum. 1 through 7 here is the true ribs. We have the false ribs here, 8 through 10, because they're hinged up to the upper rib bone. And then we have the floating 11 and 12 ribs, because they're not attached to the sternum. Okay. Now we have the appendicular skeleton. We have the pectoral girdle and the lower limbs. So here we have the clavicle of the shoulder, the scapula bone. Here we have the humerus, the radius, which is the side of the thumb, and then we have the ulna, which is on the other side. Trying to beat the clock. Now we have the hand and the wrist. We have the phalanges, which is the top part of the digits of our hand. And then we have the metacarpals here. And then we have the 8 small carpal bones. So we have the trapezium, the trapezoid. This bean-looking one is the capitate. Then we have the hamate, the triquetrum bone, and then we have the pisiform right here, which is the sesamoid bone. And then we have the lunate and the scaphoid. Okay. And then we have the pelvic girdle and then the upper limbs here. Oh, I'm sorry. We have the pelvic girdle and the lower limbs. Okay, so we have the ilium, the pubic bone right here, then the ischium. We have the femur bone, the strongest bone here, the patella of the knee, then we have the tibia, and then the fibula. Very lastly, we have the ankle and foot. Similar to the hands, we have the phalanges, these bones here. We have the metatarsals, and then we have the medial cuneiform, the intermediate cuneiform, the lateral cuneiform here. And then we have the cuboid, the navicular bone, the long one here, the talus, and the calcaneus. Okay, thank you, Professor.